Should I build a podcast or should I build a YouTube channel? So in this video, I'm going to break down the reasons that you would want to do a podcast based on who you are, who your target market is, and what your content is, and the reasons that you would want to build a YouTube channel. We live in a different world than we used to live in because people consume content differently. Now, this is an extremely important decision because in order to build a business in today's world, you have to stay relevant, but not just relevant with your content, relevant with the platform that you put your content on. Now, if you don't make the right decision, then you can fall into that place that a lot of people are in with really valuable material, the ability to help people change their lives, but nobody's consuming it, therefore it's useless. And if you have a product that nobody's consuming, you don't have a business, nor do you have impact with your message. Now, make sure you stick around to the end, not just to get the conversation in its entirety, which is important, but these last two concepts I discussed are marketing principles that no matter which platform you choose are critical for you to understand building your business in today's world.
Specifically between YouTube or a podcast, where is the best place for me to put that content out to the people who need to hear it and read it and consume it?
Right, especially the dogs. I think dogs are going to be more along the lines of podcast than YouTube, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, it's a perpetual challenge, I would say, for so many people in the coaching world, and I mean personal development in general. But we'll speak directly to coaches, and I mean you nailed it in terms of either or. If you're going to create content in today's world, you pretty much need to go with a podcast or you've got to go with video. And if you're going to go with the video, YouTube is a way to go. I mean, you can do both and I'll get to that. But if we're going to try to choose one or the other, it's important to first understand what the point is. Like, what's the purpose of the content? And so we'll get to a side-by-side comparison and my suggestion of why you should do podcasts if you meet these criteria and why you should do YouTube, etc. But first, let's talk about like why content. You know, unfortunately, I think there's been a swing of the pendulum towards sales. Whereas when the online world started out, we used to hear all the time, content is king, content is king. And that just meant you got to get content out there. But that was when there was no such thing as online content. And then you needed to populate whether it's YouTube channel or your blogs or whatever. And so there was this philosophy in the early days of internet marketing that you got to get content out there, right? Essentially, you have to, you got to fill your living room. What's it called? Like when you not design, but your living room needs like furniture. You got to furnish, right? You got to furnish your living room essentially, right? So you want to furnish your website or you want to furnish your online platforms. And then I think what happened is people learned how to sell online. Once you have all this content, now it's all about sales. And then the pendulum started to swing toward fast sales. And now people, and a lot of people are still teaching this, that you don't need a whole lot of content. All you need is like one webinar, or you just need one concept or one piece of content or one product. And then you just need to sell the hell out of it, basically, right? And that can work. I mean, it works for some people, but if you're a teacher, I mean, I'm a teacher, obviously you're a teacher. Most people that are going to make it to this far into the video are going to be teachers. And so if you're a teacher, you got to understand that those fast paths to cash are sales funnels, like to the highest degree, right? I mean, you're essentially building a boiler room online if you're just trying to create sales as fast as possible. But that's where a lot of the internet moved to, and it seems easier, right? Like I don't have to create all this content. I can just have a couple things and I don't need to spend time on video or spend time messing around with all the creation of the stuff. And I could just create one thing or have somebody else create it for me. We could just sell it. Yeah. Yes. And
cool. And then invite like people over for a party in my living room.
I missed the first part. What did you say?
Oh, I said I could just buy like one stool, right, that somebody else made, and invite like 50 people over for a party in my living room.
Right. So you don't have to furnish the whole living room. You just got to like have one thing in there. And that, yeah, that's a good point. It's a good extension of that analogy. And one of the problems is that that sounds really good. It sounds sexy. It sounds convenient. It actually sounds smart, because now it sounds like you're taking one thing or a small number of things and just selling them. So that philosophy can work for who it works for. And my experience is it doesn't work for most people as the coach, nor does it work for most people as the consumer, because nowadays, since this online marketing world and just online world is much more mature than it used to be, there's so much content out there. And so we are now in what I would say is more of a scrolling society than we were 15 years ago, when there wasn't a whole lot of content out there, right? So now the existence of content isn't as valuable as it used to be. Here's what I mean by that. Back in the day, there wasn't a lot of content. So since there wasn't a whole lot of supply of content, each piece of content had more value because there wasn't as much. Now there's tons of content. So each individual piece of content doesn't have as much value to the consumer just because there's a bigger supply of it. Does that make sense?
Totally.
And so now if you have a video up online, it's like everybody has a video up online. It doesn't matter that you got this video launch series where you got 3 or 4 videos in a row. I've seen it a million times. So now you need to find distinction in a different way. And because there's so much saturation, the distinction is going to be found in the depth of the content, not just the existence of the content. And the depth of the content can be going deep in a single video, but I think it's got to be there has to be an element of repetition. Like I need to see multiple videos. I need to see a lot of articles on your blog. I need to see the existence of a lot of content in order for you to now prove to me that you've been around a while, that you've created a lot. Because I don't want to show up and there only be one stool in the middle of the living room. In fact, I don't want there to only be one living room. I want to know there are multiple rooms. I want to know that this house is lived in and this classroom is built. And I think that's all a function of what's been happening in our online space over the last, I'd say 10 years. So that's what I meant a little while ago, that the pendulum is now swinging back to where I think people value content more, but they value the depth of the content. And 10 years ago, there wasn't the explosion of podcasts like there is now. And there wasn't the explosion of videos on YouTube and all the things that there are now. And so that's simultaneously good and bad. It's bad in the sense that if you want to create more credibility, you've got to do more. But it's great in the sense that most people won't do that.
Right.
Because most people are following the path of convenience. That's just human nature, right? And so if you're willing to not just fall in line and follow the path of convenience and just buy into the idea that there's all these 1, 2, 3, one size fits all formulas, and you can smash your sales cycle down to where you just get people to watch one webinar and then get them on a phone call and sell the crap out of them on the phone call. That's okay. If you're a sales guy and you want a boiler room, that's fine. But people actually, in my experience, don't appreciate that level of condensed consumer experience, right? So, and we also live in a world where, because there's so much available, we might not even watch an entire video. And so if I don't watch your whole video, even if it's a 15-minute little mini webinar or something, if I don't watch the whole thing, then you have to get me back to finish that thing, rather than follow me around the internet and give me another thing, and then give me another thing, and give me another thing. And so it's actually much better to have a buffet of content for people rather than just to have one dish. And if they don't finish the dish, you're just going to do everything you can to get them back in front of that dish and finish the thing that they already didn't finish. There's a reason they didn't finish it. And I don't know if this is true for you, but I know, like, I don't know how many audiobooks I have on my phone that I haven't finished. And I tell myself, like, I really want to finish these books, but as soon as I get bored with a book, I know I'm not going back to it.
Right.
As soon as I make the decision to leave it, like, we're done for the most part, right? So once we decide to move on, we generally need something new, which is why more content is a better play in today's world. So let me back up a second and explain why content is so critical from the consumer standpoint, right? I mean, number one, they need to consume something. They're a consumer because they consume. And you've got to have things for them to consume. And again, we live in this fast-paced society. People are scrolling on their phones. People are searching YouTube, or they're going through Spotify or wherever they're going to find their podcasts. And they're looking for, not even just looking for, people expect now a lot of options.
Yeah.
And so we want a lot of items on the menu. If you only have one item on the menu and there's millions of items on the menu, then what are the chances that they're going to find your one thing and go all in on your one thing? So we've got to have more items for them to consume. When you have those items, the second piece here is you become more credible. I already talked about that a little bit, but people will trust you more if you are the authority. And you don't really get a whole lot of authority in a single video or a single webinar. It can establish you, or it can establish authority for you if the webinar is really done well, but there's just so much pressure to sell in those condensed funnels. My experience is when people know, like, we live in more of a binging society. You know, we binge YouTube, or we binge Netflix, or, you know, whatever platform people are going to get their content. And so in today's world, people are actually going to respect a lot more people that have binge worthy content, podcasts, YouTube, what have you, because that is, I think, a new level of credibility because of the expectation, right? It's like 15 years ago, one of the questions was, do I need a website or not? That's not a question anymore. If you don't have a website, you're out. Right. It's an expectation.
The first thing I do, like, I Google, like, I type their name in right away.
Right. Whereas once upon a time, it was an option.
Right.
Once upon a time, it was like, oh, let's see if they have that icing on the cake. Well, now, if you don't have a website, you don't have a cake, right? Like, it's no longer an option. And I would say that's where we're moving with the existence of robust content, is that now it's becoming even more of an expectation. So if you don't have a lot of things for me to sample, I'm out. And in today's world, people trust a lot less in general, and definitely online. And trust is not a singular action. In terms of gaining people's trust, is usually not a singular event. In the online world, the way you gain trust is you show up for people repeatedly. That I'll be there. I'll be there every other week. I'll be there every month. I'll be there every week. Whatever your pattern is, the showing up is critical to build and keep human trust nowadays. And that speaks to the third thing, which is consistency. If I know that I'm going to see something from you on every other Tuesday, or if I know that if I go to your podcast, it's going to be refreshed with episodes, you know, relatively consistently, then that gives me that element of trust that I know you're going to keep showing up for me. So regardless of whether we go podcast or YouTube, we have to understand now, and you've heard me talk about this for so long now, is that for where our society is going and the state of the online marketing world right now, and the lack of trust that people have in online marketing because they've just been taken advantage of so many times, we as teachers need to build classrooms online. Let the salespeople build boiler rooms online, and they'll sell you on why that's the way to go. But if you force a teacher to sell, number one, that's not going to be easy because that's not a muscle that most teachers have. And number two, if you learn how to sell, you will be shifting away from who you really are. And I've just talked to so many coaches who are teachers, but they think in order to win, you need to sell because they bought that program from a salesperson. And then even if they win, they're not happy, right? Like even if you build a successful business financially, but you're not doing it in an aligned way, then at some point in time, that's going to come crashing down, or you're going to wake up one day and go like, what have I done? You know, like this isn't even what I want. You know, I'm not enjoying this. So if you're a teacher, build a classroom. If you're a salesperson, build a boiler room. And if you're still here as a salesperson, just turn this off, right? Because I'm not going to be much use to you. But if you're a teacher, then use your unique skill set and your genius, which is teaching. And my experience, and I think this is true for you, I know this is true for you, is that when people realize that it's okay to just teach and teach and teach, and you don't have to follow the sales game plans, it's amazing how energetically people just kind of settle in and go, oh, this is actually kind of fun, right? Like this is actually enjoyable.
Right.
And I don't think it's possible for you to enjoy something if it's not aligned with who you really are and what your soul actually wants to do. So that's a little bit of a high level conversation on why you need to put content out there nowadays. And then back to your question, where are you going to put it out? You're going to put it out on podcasts or put it out through podcasts or put it out through video and specifically a YouTube channel. So I'll break those down, but is there anything you want to add to any of that or follow-up questions?
Yeah, I'm just feeling now just that sense of urgency to make a decision, right? Like that there's so much that's being not taught, right? In the moments of the back and forth of which one is the right thing to do or which platform is the best one to go on. And I'm excited to hear this next piece just to look at the distinctions. I can make a decision and move on it, honestly.
Yeah, one of the things that is so critical, I mean, you know this because we've been tracking it lately, is there are so many people that are now coming into our business that have watched or consumed in some form hours and hours and hours, dozens of hours of content. Yeah. And if people have listened to or watched 5 hours of content, 10 hours of content, 20 hours of content, they really know the teacher and they know the brand and it feels good. And so even if that seems like it's a longer path, it's actually a much more stable path for long-term business growth. And most people's mindset doesn't allow for the foundational building of the content in that way, because we just think we're going to put out one video and make 10 grand off the video because we're going to put a link out there and everybody's going to go to our website and buy right away. It's just not how it works. And it's working less and less and less because of the abundance of content out there. So that's a critical factor in you getting your message out, is you got to have a lot for people to consume and feel really safe and trusting with you, right? You can build rapport through the existence of a lot of content. And again, it could be like long videos or audios, or it could be a lot of relatively shorter ones. But the more people consume, the more they trust you. And that's such a critical component in today's world. So speaking of making your decision, did you have something else?
Yeah, I wanted to say, when you were talking about that, I just kept thinking about it in a relationship, right? Like really looking at this as the coach, as the teacher, as the speaker, the person, the people, right? It's a relationship. And so to put that time in and really nurture and nourish and pour into that relationship, if I'm going to have that long-term journey with them, versus just rush and how can I run through the numbers and like a speed dating, right? But with zero connection. And that's not something that's actually of interest to me.
Yeah, it's a great analogy, right? You want to have a one-night stand, or are you looking for a relationship?
Yeah.
And for the teachers who want to build a coaching business, if you're a teacher, don't even consider the one-night stand approaches, because it's not who you are.
Right.
That's not what excites you. That's not what is going to light you up. It's not what's going to fuel you long-term. It's just more of a short-term play to make money as fast as possible. And if that's what does light people up, because there's nothing wrong with that approach. I want to be really clear. There's nothing wrong with that approach unless it's not who you are. If it's not who you are, then the wrongness of the approach is because it's out of alignment with who you are. And so I'm not saying that anybody who teaches any of that or anybody who does any of that is necessarily wrong. This isn't a right or wrong from a moral or ethical standpoint. It's whatever is aligned with you is right, and whatever is not aligned with you is wrong, because it's not going to produce what you ultimately want to produce. So back to what you just said a moment ago is, how do I decide, right? So I want to break down the benefits of podcasting versus the benefits of YouTube, and then hopefully give everybody a simple way to say that's for me or that's for me. Nice. And to do that, we're going to switch the set here, and I'm actually going to go over to the chalkboard so we can visually see these two lists. Okay, so hopefully I've convinced you that you need content in today's society. And if you're going to create content, then one of the main questions we get asked all the time is, should I do audio content as a podcast, or should I do video content as a YouTube channel or on my YouTube channel? What I'm going to give you is like just the pros of each of these. And then by default, if there's a pro on one of them, it's kind of like a con on the other one. And I'll speak to them. So first, let's talk about podcasts. Podcasts are simpler from a technology standpoint. This is perfect for tonight, because literally I think we've probably spent an hour and a half to 2 hours tonight, because for whatever reason the light was creating this ridiculous shine off of my face, and then I had to go into the webcam and try to fix the webcam, and then I was trying to do all these different lighting setups, and I had some lights right on my face. And anytime you've got cameras involved, the camera picks up lighting differently. You've got obviously sound issues that could be a little bit more challenging with a camera. You've got so many different kinds of cameras. So because a podcast is just audio, then you don't have to deal with all the technology, and you could just find yourself a quiet place in your house, or rent an office space or something like that. And the technology is essentially, you just got to get audio into a computer. And with videos, obviously, it's a lot more. Along with it being simpler to set up, you've also got more simple editing. Simpler or more simple? I don't know. But whatever it is, it's easier to edit as well, because you're only dealing with an audio file. So you got one file. Whereas with video, you've got the video and the lighting, and you've got potential exposure and all the things that come along with visuals. And you've got audio on top of that. And sometimes the audio track and the visuals kind of split apart. You got to re-splice them together. So it's going to be easier to edit with a podcast. And One of the benefits for a lot of people is that you're not on camera. And that's more like energetically, right? A lot of people have visibility issues. And if you tell somebody to get in front of a camera, they kind of freak out. But if you give them a microphone and start talking to the microphone, there's just a lot less visibility issues, right? You might not like the way that your voice sounds when it's recorded and you hear it through the podcast, but that's easier to get over for most of us than not liking the way your face looks on camera. And you don't like the way that your voice might sound if you've got that issue too. So you're gonna be confronted a little bit more with videos, whereas podcasts, it's easier to just get over how your voice sounds. And then finally, you're generally going to find more consistency with a podcast because of these things, because it's easier, because it takes less time to set up, because you don't have all the lighting and all the other things that visuals bring into play. It'll probably be easier for you to do the podcasts because there's less variables and there's less personal confrontation and so forth. So a podcast is going to be simpler for most people. And there's nothing wrong with putting out a lot of podcast material in terms of comparison, like do we want audio or do we want video? You can create a classroom with both of those. And there are a lot of people, I'm sure you know many of them, that don't get on camera at all, but they've got extremely successful podcasts. So if that's the way you're going to go and you're going to be more consistent with podcasts, then just go for podcasts. If you're just starting out, I would suggest you probably start with podcasts. There's a lot of stuff to learn, a lot of muscles to build with creativity and just getting things out there that you can learn with podcasts, and you don't have to worry about jumping into video just yet. So I would say for most new people, get consistent with producing on a podcast, unless you're just ready to create video for the reasons that I'll share with you now. For YouTube, you've got more repurposability, repurposed content. So what that means is repursed content. See, you've got more repursed content. You've got more repurposed content. What that means is you create a video and you can just do more with this file. You can create little sound bites and put it up on even Twitter and other social media platforms. You can obviously create chunks of video. We put out a 1-minute video or so pretty much every single day on our social media channels, and it's just pulling clips from here, and you've got the visual component of people seeing it on the social channels, but you can also rip the audio and put it out on audio channels. And it's just, or you can just film your podcast as well. And if you're dealing with all the video stuff, so you have a video you can put up on your YouTube channel and still produce a podcast. So you got to set it up right, and that's a little bit beyond the scope of this video. But you can just do a lot more with a video file than you can with just an audio file. I said earlier that you can create classrooms with both of them, but with YouTube, you can brand your classroom a lot more. You've got the YouTube channel art. That is what people see visually. You've got a trailer. When people go to your YouTube channel, you can have the trailer start to automate right away. You've got thumbnails for every single video, and the thumbnails can be different. You can change colors, you can change the energy. You've just got a lot more space, and especially visual space, for people to see and kind of feel your energy on YouTube than you do on a podcast, because there's just not as much brandability on iTunes or even Spotify. So YouTube is going to give you a lot more robust opportunities to do that. YouTube is also the #2 search engine in the world. The #1 search engine in the world is Google, and they own YouTube. So you're essentially feeding into the #1 and the #2 search engine when you put content up on YouTube. if you were to search on Google for how to bake cookies, you might get responses for podcasts. They might make their way into your search results. But if there's a video on how to bake cookies and a podcast on how to bake cookies, and if people click on the podcast, they go to iTunes or they go to Spotify, Google would much rather you click on the video, which takes you to the platform that they still own, rather than send you to another platform. So for that reason, you're gonna have Google liking you more if you're putting videos up on YouTube, which means they'll let people know about you more in their search engines. You've also got deeper analytics with the YouTube channel. I just got extremely hungry, and I don't think it has anything to do with what we're talking about, but I just wanted to share with you. So you've got deeper analytics on YouTube. We were just looking at our analytics on our channel today, just for a little bit with our YouTube coach, and we were looking at various traffic sources for every video. Like this one video is doing pretty well, and where's the traffic coming from? And what are the countries for all the different viewers? So we can say the majority of our viewers for this video is coming from this particular part of the world. The majority of the viewers for another video could be coming from another part of the world. You can look at your entire channel analytics, or you can look at each individual video, and you can take a look at how long people watch each individual video. Where are they falling off at? So if people are falling off at the 2-minute mark, then what can we do from minute 0, second 0 to minute number 2 to try to uptick the retention time, right? And then you can take a look at whether people are clicking in the middle of your videos or at the end of the videos. So you just got a lot more analytical data from a marketing standpoint that is extremely powerful. If you have the time and the space and the desire to play that game, you're going to get a lot more from YouTube from a marketing standpoint. And one of the things you're going to get from YouTube based on all of these analytics is more organic traffic. So if you have a podcast, or if you're consuming a podcast, you listen to Joe Rogan's podcast or something, you're not going to get a whole list of all these other suggested podcasts, because your podcasts don't really have a feed, right? It doesn't work the same way as YouTube does, where if you watch a video on YouTube, you get all of these suggested videos, and a lot of them. So YouTube is going to throw a bunch of options at you organically. You don't have to search for each individual video to come up. You could watch one video and YouTube will throw 30 more videos at you based on that one video. And because of that, you can do a lot more with your videos. So for instance, we were looking today at this one particular video on another channel that is sending a lot of traffic to one of our other videos. Just one of our videos that's producing really well. And we saw the number one traffic source is that video on another channel. So what we're going to do is take advantage of that knowledge, and we'll give YouTube 5 more videos to send people to from somebody else's video rather than just one right now. So if this is too much for you, don't worry about it. You can consume this video multiple times so that you can sort of digest this. Or if at any point in time, about anything really that you watch on any of my stuff, especially this video or this channel, you can always do a free consultation with us if you have any specific questions about what you should do or how any of this relates to your particular niche or where you are in the process or whatever. So if you want any of these questions answered in more detail with you specifically, or anything related to you creating your content, then sign up. There's a link in the description. You can sign up for a free consultation. So the organic traffic feature of YouTube is golden. The majority of the people that come to our channel and subscribe to our channel, the majority of people that are watching our videos, and therefore the majority of people that are coming into our business, joining our email lists, are coming from YouTube organic traffic. They're coming from suggested videos. And I can't adequately explain how powerful that is to be inside the algorithm of the #1 and #2 search engine that's taking videos that I did years ago maybe and telling people about them versus a podcast or other social media channels that just doesn't have that kind of web built into the algorithm. And so you're going to get rewarded by doing more videos. You're going to get rewarded by understanding the way the algorithms look or work rather. And then you just keep creating the content that works in terms of getting more people to watch your videos. So this piece right here is massively important. And I didn't even realize how critical this was until we really started to focus on YouTube 2 years ago. And then really about 8 months ago is when I recognized, when I learned how powerful of a source organic suggested videos are on YouTube. The next thing is that you've got more visual connection, right? If you add your face on camera and people see your body language, there's going to be more of a connection. You're giving people more sensory input to consume your content with, right? And that's always going to be better because they can still hear you. But when they hear you and see you, it'll be easier for them to experience more of your energy. And some people will say, yeah, but I don't want that because I don't want them to see me on camera, or I don't want them to see my body language because I don't really feel comfortable, and I don't want them to not like what they see. What I will tell you is as long as you're aligned with what you're doing, I mean, certainly if you've got some visibility issues, that needs to be handled. And if you want help with that, then sign up for one of those calls. But if you're aligned with who you are and you're authentic on camera and somebody doesn't like that, you don't want to try to fool them. I would rather them know that they don't like you, and you would rather them know they don't like you so that they opt out of your funnel and opt out of your community rather than them showing up but still not really knowing whether they like you or not. So as long as you're being authentic, you want people to know that you're not for them. And so the more information you can give them to either opt in or opt out of your content and who you are, that's actually better. So a lot of people try to do everything they can to make people not like them, to make people not unsubscribe from their email list, or to make people not click away. That's actually the wrong thing to do. You want the people that are not assigned to you, that you are not assigned to, you want them to opt out as quick as possible because then you have less people to manage. You've got a smaller community. It's all about quality over quantity. So give them everything that they could possibly have to know whether you're aligned with them and whether they really are drawn to you or not. And then the final thing here, because of all of this that we're talking about, especially because of this visual piece, you've got an opportunity to be more distinct. There are a lot more consistent podcasts out there than there are consistent YouTube channels. One of the reasons is because people got into podcasting a little bit earlier in terms of being consistent with it and really committing to it. But another reason is because of that visual connection. And so if you have the body and if you have the desire to elevate your marketing, your branding, your connection, your rapport as much as possible, then give people that visual connection, which will make you stand out because a lot of people won't do it. And if you know that you want to give people this visual connection, then just start now. If you know eventually you want to get there, then I would just say get there. Just get on that path because you're going to have to learn the things that you need to learn during the earlier phases of your video journey, right? And there's a lot of things to learn on YouTube as far as the technical stuff and all that. But if you know that you really want to give people as much as you can, then start doing that sooner rather than later. And one more piece about the visual connection: the more sensitive your content is, the more your visual presence, the more the visual element will benefit you. So if you have content that is talking about things that people are really insecure about, then them being able to see your face and your, at least the upper part of your body, and being able to consume as much information as possible will create more of an intimate connection, more rapport, and they will be more open to the sensitive content. So if you're talking about things like maybe getting over abuse, or you're talking about visibility stuff, you're talking about low self-esteem, you're talking about being introverted, any of those sorts of things that a lot of people have more insecurities around, then the video is going to be a better way to go, because it'll calm them down a little bit more and be more receptive to your content. So that's my list based on my experience. If you've been on my channel or you take a look at the channel, I have committed way, way more to YouTube than I have to podcasts. And it's been, honestly, it's been incredible. The last 2 years of committing to YouTube has done so much more for our business. And the other thing is, it doesn't take money to create this content. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of money to create podcasts either, but the return that you're going to get on the energy investment is incredible, especially if you have your back end systems created, because this is really traffic, right? The whole point of building a channel on YouTube or creating a podcast is to create traffic so people can consume your information. But having a high traffic amount isn't going to do a whole lot in terms of building your business, unless you create a channel that has like a ton of viral content, millions of views. You can make money on ad revenue. And if you have a podcast that has a ton of downloads, you can make money on sponsorships, but that's small money. The money that you can make based on the community on those platforms is tiny compared to the revenue you can generate when you bring them onto your platform. So that means on your YouTube videos, you've got links down in the description, and they can go and click a link and download a report, right? We've got a bunch of stuff in our description where you can go look at a sales consultation flow or identify who your target market is. If you have those links, those are essentially invitations into your community. And then once you have people on your platform inside your community, that's when you can grow your business a heck of a lot more. You can get on free consultation calls and offer people coaching packages, etc. So I want you to understand where these two live in the overall strategy of your business. Oh, I almost forgot. There's one really critical and time relevant consideration here. The world has been turned upside down. And with the pandemic, a lot of people are in their homes. A lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people are now working from home. And what that's done is it's changed the way people consume information online. And one of the interesting things, we just learned this today, because of the pandemic, there are a lot of people who are consuming YouTube, not just from their phone, not just from their computer, on their television. People are sitting in front of their TV. A lot of people don't have cable anymore, especially the younger generation. They're watching YouTube on their screen, on their big screens, on their TVs. And if people, because we're not going out and about right now, if people are sitting down to watch something visual, they're not going to iTunes or Spotify to look for podcasts to watch on their TV. They want to watch a show. And so this completely predictable phenomenon is happening right now where a lot of the traffic sources or the way people are consuming is actually coming from a TV screen. And that fits into not only just YouTube, but actually longer form content. Like a video like this. A lot of our videos are well over an hour. If you're watching this on your TV, please let me know. It blew me away when I was told this like 2 weeks ago, and then it was reinforced with our YouTube coach today. And it just blew me away because I've never sat down and looked at YouTube on my TV. So I would love to know if any of you are actually watching this on your TV. It's just another consideration in all of this to take advantage of some of the shifts that society has made. If you have the chops, if you have the body, if you have the desire to create videos on YouTube consistently, then my suggestion is create your YouTube videos and then just take the audio and put them on your podcast channel. So whatever video you have on YouTube, unless it's highly visual, like you're showing graphs or you're showing things that wouldn't make sense if people were just listening, which is fairly rare. If your content is easy to repurpose over here on audio, then put your energy in creating a YouTube channel, rip the audio away from the video file, and then put that up on your podcast. You're gonna have to do a little bit of maybe a different introduction on your podcast, right? Welcome to my podcast versus welcome to my video. But you'll get a lot more in these two channels if you can do this consistently. Now, if you're going to start with a podcast, the question that we get asked is, when should you shift over to YouTube? If this is just where you are and you're more comfortable here and this is what you're going to do more consistently, fine. Once you have this consistently down, meaning you've got the foundational systems, you're putting out your podcast whenever you're choosing, whether it's once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever. Once you have the foundation down and you start, like, you get as much out of it as you can from a business standpoint, you start looking at analytics, and you're bringing people into your business, etc. Once you have that down and it's virtually automated to where all you're doing is creating the podcast, and you've got other people maybe doing the editing, and you've got maybe people uploading the podcast, then I would say then you can move over into YouTube. I wouldn't try to juggle these two things with them both being unstable. Because there's enough different variables in these two that if you've got both of them unstable, you don't have the foundation set, it's going to be really difficult for you to commit to either one of them. So I would commit to the podcast until you've got it foundational and you've got it automated, and then add YouTube and all the visual components, all the things we talked about, to expand your brand and scale it even more. Let me know what you think. If there's anything that I've missed, if you think there are more benefits on either one of these or more of con, what does con even stand for? Con, it's like conflict, like what's pro, and I don't even know what it stands for. But if you have anti-benefits on either one of these, like reasons not to do it, or just questions, anything at all, go ahead and drop a comment on this video. If you like the video, obviously share it out with your friends and family and put it on billboards around your city if you really know that people need this content. And engage. So ask any questions here in the comment section and we'll get somebody, either myself or somebody on my team will respond at some point. So hopefully this has been valuable for you. Now, if you like this video, check out that video where I break down how to put your sales funnels together for maximum impact and revenue. Now, unfortunately, what a lot of people do is just have a thank you page that says, hey, go check your email. I just sent you the thing. And effectively what you've just done is shut the door on their excitement